I'm Brad J for Tame Your Talent, another edition. Today we're going to learn speaking techniques. And it's so big I have to make 2 courses with this one because speaking techniques when it comes to announcing is so huge that it's something that's very important. These techniques will help you get through and help you gain experience as an announcer and make you a better announcer. Okay, what do I mean when I talk about speaking techniques, all right? Well, let's say you get hired to do an event and you're told to come on out and be an announcer at this event. And you know that you have to get on the microphone at 9 a.m. for this pre-competition, into the competition, the awards after, and then closing statements and all that stuff. Let's say you have to do this. Well, where do you start? How do you figure that out? What's first? What's next? What's tomorrow? That's the format. So that's the stuff that you need to work on. Yes, you can trust the people that you're working for to supply you with all kinds of information. Now, I've been working with X Games for many, many years, and sometimes I don't get enough from what they want to offer me, but sometimes I get too much. How do you weed through it all? How do you make sure you're covering things properly? Well, I like to do something, and I've talked about this in other lessons. It's a one sheet, and a one sheet is one of those things that you can do as an announcer that always gives you a page of information that you can refer to at any point at all. And very, very important. It could come to, so what I do, let's say, let me give you an example. So I've been doing X Games for near 2 decades almost now as an X Games announcer. So each day I make a daily sheet of everything going on in that day. And I start with the top and I run all the way down through it. I'll put sponsors, I'll tease what's coming up the next day. All that, websites, social media, call outs, all that stuff I put there on a one sheet, so I always have that at my disposal. And that's one of the most important things you can do. Sometimes you get so much paperwork. Look, I've been working for 4 or 5 different Olympic Games now, and the amount of paperwork that you get working the Olympic Games to try to be prepared to announce this event, it would take you years to go through it. So you have to decide what's important to go through. And by doing this stuff for so many years, you start realizing what's easier and what else you can do to make it easier for you. So where to start? One sheet. That is very important, okay? Well, what's happening first? Tease the upcoming event. What's happening, okay? What is coming up, all right? And then when you're in the event, what's coming up tomorrow, okay? You need to know this. And one of the most important things that I can tell any announcer who's up and coming, who's getting into announcing for the first time, is your ins and outs, man. There is nothing worse than an uncomfortable start or an uncomfortable end to anything that you are ever saying. It's like one of those things where, and I've seen it so many times. I used to do it when I was just getting into announcing, where you'll be doing a wrap up an interview and you're like, and I'm Brad J and I'm here in the mix here at X Games, and this is the Festival Village where all the stuff is going on. A lot of fun down here, and back to you guys. See, can you be more uncomfortable at that end? That is horrible. So have your ins and your outs, I call them. How do you start things? Well, I always start good morning if it's morning time, good afternoon if it's afternoon, good evening if it's evening time, good evening, what's going on everybody? Welcome out here. That's how I like to start, okay? Start it off with hello everybody, address the audience, and then always know your outs. What's out? Now, are you going to a video and they're going to play a video after you're done talking? Are you going to go back to 2 other announcers? So where are you going? What are your outs? Do you know who your announcers are? Do you know where you're going? So always know your ins and outs when you get there. Always have an example of what you want to do. Even if it was you're sending it back up to the booth and you're a reporter, you say back up to you guys in the booth. That's an out, believe it or not, that's an out. You could use that as an out. Back to you guys. Well, that's it from down here, back up to you. Same thing. It works. If you have those outs, you always have you don't have an uncomfortable end. You can get out, you can get in much better. Lead in, tease out. When you're going to commercials and you're leaving the programming for a second, or you're going to something else, Say what's coming up next. It always gives people a vested interest for them to hang around if they know something's cool is coming up. Radio's been doing it for years. I've been on the radio for over 20 years. This is what you always say. Well, coming up after the break, we got Bob Marley, Led Zeppelin. We have all this coming up. So what you're doing is you're keeping the crowd there through the commercials because they can't wait to get back to what you just teased, all right? Lead in. So when you start the show, you're leading in. Today, you're gonna see the best of the best competing in world-class competition. That is your lead in. That was your tease out. Ins and outs, so important. Getting the speaking points. Man, I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to mention any names, but I have done so many events where it is like pulling teeth to get any information out of them. And we're talking the simple of stuff is sponsor information. And sometimes these are new events that are brand new, that are just happening for the first time. So they don't have all the bugs worked out. So you're not getting that information. So it is up to you to study, find out who are the sponsors, what are they responsible for, and then what you do is you can write your stuff up before. I was doing a major event, a full broadcast event, and I could not, and I'm not even gonna mention any names on this one, I could not get any information on the awards and the different things that we were giving away and what was happening. So I couldn't get any information. So you know what I did? I went to work. I found out the sponsorships. I did all that information on my own, prepared myself. So when it came to my part of having to read off the awards on national television, I knew what to say. I knew the sponsor taglines, and this was without anyone even giving me anything because I wasn't gonna go out there and be left hanging because in the end, you're the one who's gonna look silly if you're not prepared. So if they're not getting you the information you need, do the work yourself. There's this thing called Google that's actually really cool, and you can search anything you want and get information and almost look like a darn expert. That simple. So get your speaking points, know your ins and outs, and know your format. And then one other thing. Sponsorship, so important. So I've been working, doing the Olympic Games now for a bunch of different Olympic Games, but I also have worked for US Snowboarding and US Free Skiing, and I've been working with them for over a decade now. And one time, I saw the sponsor list, and my friend and I, we were announcing together. It was a snowboarding halfpipe competition. The finals were coming up. I think Shaun White was competing in this thing. And the sponsors were Chevrolet, Bud Light, and Pop-Tarts. Those were actually the sponsors of a snowboarding event. Yeah, all right, yep, Chevrolet, Bud Light, Pop-Tarts. So what I did was I put those into the show. So I'm talking to my fellow announcer and I said, you know, I was driving in my brand new Chevy today, coming in, and all I could think about was breakfast. And you know what I had? I had my favorite Pop-Tarts, the s'mores flavor. So I'm eating my Pop-Tarts, my s'more flavor, and I'm driving my Chevy. I get to the event. I'm so happy to be there. And then at the end, the wrap-up party was amazing. Bud Light, ice cold for everyone. What an amazing night. So I was able to use all three sponsors in the spiel about what I did at the competition to kind of use the sponsorship. You know what? And the sponsors were happy. They loved it. It was like a big thing. It was just incorporating the sponsors into what you do. And if you do that and have fun with it, usually they're going to get more out of it because they're going to get more fun out of someone just reading a commercial. So integrating the sponsorship is so important. So when we talk about speaking technique, part one, getting speaking points, that means if you're not getting them, and here it is a day before the event, start researching on your own. Go to websites, Google, do everything you can. Ins and outs. Know your ins, know your outs. Have an idea of where you're going. Have an idea where you've been, all right? Before you start talking on the mic, before you break mic, know your out. Ask your director, ask your producer, ask him, hey, what are we doing after I'm done talking in these next 2 minutes? And they'll tell you, Brad, we're going to a video. What's the video about? Find out. So that means after you talk for 2 minutes straight, you know where you're going. Ins and outs, know them. Format, where to start, what's first, what's next, what's tomorrow. That's important too. Format, ins and outs, getting speaking points, and incorporating your sponsors. But above all, have fun, because that's kind of the important thing too. I'm Brad J. That's Tame Your Talent. Speaking Techniques, Part 1.